Welcome to Comfort Crime with Lindsay Sanchez, a cozy mystery podcast where no actual crimes have been committed. Today, we'll continue Murder on Maple Mountain, a cozy mystery with an amateur sleuth, a second chance romance, and a killer who won't stop until they finish what was started 12 years ago. If this is your first time here, welcome, and please start with Episode 1, Chapter 1, or feel free to start with the Season 1 prequel short story, Death at Dogwood Lake. There is a link to both in the show notes, or you can head to comfortcrime.com or your favorite podcast player where you can find all the episodes. For everyone else, we'll continue to Chapter 17. But first, an update. Do you remember the TV house? If you've been around here for a bit, you probably recall me mentioning this house. I pass it every single day, and without fail, if it's dark outside, their TV light is glowing through their windows like a beacon. Football, basketball, sometimes something we can't quite make out, we assume it's sports. My family has turned it into our favorite car ride game. What's the sports TV house watching today? It's ridiculous, it's oddly entertaining, and honestly, it's become one of my favorite little rituals. For research purposes, obviously. Well, today is the day. The TV house finally made it into Murder on Maple Mountain. Yay! I've been dropping little Easter eggs about this for months now, building up to this very chapter. And now that we're finally here, I am feeling the feelings. Excitement for sure, but also, well, let's just get to the chapter and you can see for yourself. Last time, Eric scared Georgia while she was walking home from Sean's. He pulled her into the shadows and told her to keep an extra close eye on Rose. Georgia had been right about Rose being in danger, and Eric said if Rose got the chance, she'd try to slip away from Officer Stewart's not-so-watchful eye. Murder on Maple Mountain, Chapter 17. Georgia looked between Jake and Lisa, both of them sitting on the couch, their arms folded. Guys, come on. Georgia moved towards the door. We have to talk to Rose. They didn't move. Why would Rose know what's in the letter? Jake leaned back, settling deeper into the cushions as if to say he wasn't going anywhere until he had more answers. Georgia had told them everything, except that Eric had ambushed her. His warning still haunted her. Whoever knew about him, their life was in danger. Georgia was in this too deep already. She knew better than to go off investigating without her friends, but that didn't mean that she had to intentionally put them in more danger. So now you think Rose is the killer? Lisa asked. No. Georgia shook her head. I'll explain it to you on the way. They had to leave. They had to get to Rose. So Rose is innocent? Shouldn't Frank be the one to know what the letter says? No. Jake interrupted, his eyes never leaving Georgia. Frank loved and respected Ivy too much. He wouldn't have gone through her personal things. That's why Ivy sent the letter there. She knew she could trust Frank. She knew nobody would touch it at his house. She found something. Georgia was pleading now. If these two didn't make up their minds quickly, she'd have to leave without them. Assuming they let her. The desperation in Eric's voice had been real, chilling. It had been enough to chase away all her gaslighting doubts and ground her in the truth. There was a killer still out there, and someone had to stop them. At this rate, it probably wouldn't be the police. Though Officer Briggs was right. People were dying, and she needed more than her gut to go on. She needed evidence. "What makes you so sure Rose knows about the envelope?" Jake asked as he pulled out his phone to check a text. It was a loaded question. Eric had said he didn't know where the letter was, but he'd inadvertently given Georgia the clue she needed to know who did, when he told her that Rose would try to sneak away. "Please," she said, "just trust me. We have to go there right now. She might be trying to leave. She might be trying to sneak away from Officer Stewart." "Why?" Lisa got up and put on her boots. "Exactly." Georgia opened the door. "Why would she try to leave?" "All right," Jake said, not needing nearly as much convincing as Georgia thought he would. "Let's go." "You're in?" His agreement seemed too good to be true. He gave her a wry smile, as if reading her thoughts. "Stewart just texted me. There's been an emergency in town, by the base of the mountain. He's going to see if he can help. He wants us to keep an eye on Rose for a bit." "That's convenient." Lisa grabbed her coat. "Look at that, all the pieces falling into place." A little too convenient. The panic Georgia had been pushing back leaked through her defenses. Just like Georgia wanted. Jake stepped out ahead of them. "I don't know about that." Georgia followed him onto the deck, peering into the corners of the darkness, in case anyone else was waiting for them. "If it were up to me, none of it would have gone down like this." They went into the cold, dark night together, Jake leading the way, Georgia and Lisa following behind. "Stay close," he said over his shoulder. Crisp silence surrounded them, nothing but the crunching of their boots against the crusty snow. The entire mountain was still, like something was in the air, like the very mountain knew there was danger prowling. They passed the empty spot where Officer Stewart's truck had been stationed. They bundled up the steps to Rose's porch. Jake knocked. Something's not right. Georgia peered in the darkened window. Her TV is off. Her TV is never off, Lisa said. And where's her cat? What kind of emergency did Officer Stewart say it was? Georgia's unease grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that something bad had happened. He didn't. Jake rechecked his phone. He just said something got called in. Lisa stepped closer, their shoulders nearly touching as they pressed their faces to the freezing glass. The living room was empty. A lone light shone from the kitchen. Maybe she's sleeping. Jake knocked again. She was just here. Georgia tried the doorknob. Locked. She was watching her baking show like she always is. Jake knocked again, louder. None of them said it, but they all had to be thinking the same thing. Someone had called Officer Stewart off his watch, and they'd come as backup too late. Georgia looked around the side of the house. Rose's old Buick sat in the driveway. Her car still here? There's no sign of forced entry. Jake stepped back, looking up and down the house like a medic searching for wounds. I'm going to check the back. Georgia turned the corner, trying not to let dark thoughts overtake her. But what if something had happened? I'll come with you. Lisa ran to catch up and laced her arm through Georgia's. There was no porch light on in the back. The only light filtered through the kitchen windows. Georgia and Lisa moved from light puddle to light puddle in an unspoken agreement to avoid the darkest parts of the yard. The back door was unlocked. Rose? Georgia called through the muted house. She hurried to the stairs. You let Jake in. I'll check the bedroom. Her room was empty, the bed made. On the nightstand was a letter addressed to Ivy Whitehead. She'd been right. Rose had stolen the letter. Georgia shoved it in her coat pocket and rushed from room to room, growing more frantic, her anxiety inflating from her stomach up to her chest and into her tight throat. Rose? Georgia ran down the hall, back to the stairs. Rose had taken the letter, and now she was missing. Eric had been right to worry, and Georgia had been right that Rose was more mixed up in this than any of them had suspected. She froze at the top of the landing, 1 foot on the top step. Jake stood in the doorway, his arms around a fluffy orange fur ball. Is that her cat? Mr. Haverty, I think that's his name. Lisa scratched behind his ears. You found him outside? He was meowing in the bushes. The laurels? Georgia ran down the stairs and squinted into the night. Rose wouldn't have left him outside, not by himself. Call Stewart or Briggs, whoever can get here fastest. She pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and ran down the steps to the edge of the laurels. Rose? She swept her phone like a spotlight in front of her. Rose! She moved down the hedge, not sure what she was looking for, not wanting to think about what she might find. Rose! Jake followed, still holding Mr. Haverty. I'll look over here. Lisa pulled out her phone and checked the other side of the yard. Where would she have gone? Jake matched Georgia's hurried stride. I'm not worried about where she was going, Georgia admitted, though the words hurt coming out. I'm just hoping she made it there. What? Why? He still didn't get it. It's not like he was slow or like he couldn't have figured it out. It's just that he didn't have all the information. He hadn't heard Eric's voice or seen the lone letter on Rose's nightstand. Jake still didn't know how close they all were to a murderer. She had the letter. Georgia sniffed to hide the barely controlled tremor in her voice. Inside, she's the one who took it. So, Rose is the killer? No. Georgia walked faster, almost running now, through the snow to the road. She knows who the killer is. She's known all along. Who is it? Jake stopped, standing still in the middle of a bunch of aspens. I don't know, Georgia whispered. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry and throw herself on the ground and pound the frozen earth like a toddler. She wanted to give up and curl in a ball and forget any of this had ever happened. But Rose was out there. She could feel it, and she needed their help. Georgia kept running. The shaking light from her phone touched something on the ground. A pair of shoes. Limbs fanned out at wrong angles. A coat. A hat. Rose? Georgia rushed to her side. The woman cringed with each shallow breath, like even that small of a movement put her in excruciating pain. Rose, what happened? The woman's eyes rolled to the back of her head and up again. She blinked once. Okay, Georgia dialed 911. Just relax. We're going to get you help. Jake, Lisa, she called as she waited for someone to answer. She's here. And she was alive. Barely. Georgia knelt by Rose, hovering over her, wanting to comfort her but unsure if holding her hand would help or put her in more pain. She took off Sienna's coat and laid it over her, then gently held her gloved hands to the gash on the woman's forehead. It's going to be okay, Georgia said, with as much calm as she could muster, hoping rather than knowing it to be true. Help is coming, and they're going to figure all of this out. Between Rose's mangled legs, clearly broken arm, and bleeding head, it looked like Rose had been hit by a truck. Someone had run her down or beat her to within an inch of her life. Someone didn't want Rose Harding to talk. An ambulance wailed up the mountain, breaking the eerie stillness and its spell. 3 suits jumped out of the back doors as soon as it stopped. I'll go with her. Lisa volunteered when the crew had packaged Rose onto a gurney and pushed her in. You two find out who did this, and you make them pay. Georgia and Jake stood side by side as the flashing lights faded from Sunset Cabin Glen. Georgia picked up Sienna's coat from the ground where the ambulance crew had left it. Ivy's stolen letter burned in the pocket. The letter Rose had almost given her life for. Eric hadn't known that his mom had the letter, but he'd known she was up to something that could leave her broken and left for dead in the road. He'd known she was in danger. He'd been right. Georgia would find out who'd done this, if it was the last thing the killer ever let her do. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a mystery-loving friend, or consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast player. Most of all, thank you so much for being here today. I loved it, and I'm already excited for next week.